My name is Thad, and I want to tell you a story that completely changed my life in one night. I thought I knew my wife Linda inside and out, but it turned out I was wrong by 100%. Let me start with that evening when everything went to hell. Our company's corporate party at the Marriott Hotel in downtown Chicago. Linda worked as an HR manager, I was the chief accountant. We'd been married for 12 years, seemed like a solid couple. That evening I made the biggest mistake of my life. Amber, the new girl from the marketing department, 28 years old, blonde with green eyes. She approached me at the bar and we started talking. First just about work, then about hobbies, then alcohol did its thing. I don't know how it happened, but an hour later we were going up in the elevator to her room. Linda was talking with colleagues by the pool at that time. I thought no one would care about my absence for half an hour. But I didn't notice Sarah, Linda's friend from the sales department, who was smoking on the second-floor balcony. She saw us entering the elevator together. She saw me leaving Amber's room 40 minutes later, adjusting my tie. The next morning I woke up with a terrible headache and an even more terrible feeling of guilt. Linda was making breakfast, humming some melody. She acted absolutely normal. I thought I got lucky. "How was the corporate party, honey?" she asked, serving coffee. "Normal. Nothing special," I replied, not looking into her eyes. But what I didn't know would have changed everything if I had found out earlier. Sarah told Linda about what she saw that same night. My wife knew about my betrayal even before I came home. The next month was strange. Linda acted as always, cooked my favorite dishes, asked about work, even bought me a new watch for my birthday. I started thinking that Sarah might have been mistaken or didn't see anything at all. But Linda was playing a completely different game. Later I found out that she started collecting evidence from day one. She found receipts from restaurants where I had lunch with Amber during work breaks. She photographed messages on my phone when I was taking a shower. She recorded our conversations when I talked on the phone in the garage. The worst part, she hired a private investigator through her lawyer friend. Photos, documents, testimonies. All of this was accumulating and I didn't even suspect it. During those 30 days of my blissful ignorance, Linda was methodically building her case. She consulted with divorce attorneys, researched Illinois divorce laws, and calculated exactly how much she could get with adultery evidence. She opened her own bank account and started transferring small amounts from our joint savings, amounts I wouldn't notice but would add up over time. She even started documenting my daily routine. What time I left for work, when I came home, where I went on weekends. She was building a profile of my life that would later be used against me in court. I remember one evening during that month, I came home late from what I told her was a work meeting. In reality, I had met Amber at a coffee shop downtown. We didn't do anything inappropriate, just talked and had coffee. But Linda was waiting up for me with a concerned expression. "You've been working so much overtime lately, honey. Are you sure everything's okay at the office?" she asked, wrapping her arms around me. I felt a pang of guilt but assured her everything was fine. What I didn't know was that she had already confirmed through her contacts in the company that there was no late meeting scheduled that day. Another piece of evidence for her growing collection. The most chilling part was how normal everything seemed. Linda continued planning our summer vacation, talking about remodeling the kitchen, even suggesting we start trying for another child. All while secretly preparing to take me to the cleaners in divorce court. She was particularly clever about the financial aspects. Linda started suggesting I put more money into investments that would be harder to liquidate quickly, a strategy that would benefit her in the divorce settlement. She encouraged me to cash out some of my retirement funds to pay for home improvements, reducing the assets I could claim later. During this time, I continued my foolish affair with Amber. We met for coffee twice a week, exchanged texts daily, and I even bought her small gifts. I thought I was being discreet, but Linda's private investigator was documenting everything. Every restaurant, every gift purchase, every moment we spent together. The investigator, a woman named Janet whom Linda had found through her lawyer, was incredibly thorough. She followed me for weeks, photographed me with Amber, recorded our conversations from adjacent tables and restaurants. She even managed to get photos of us kissing goodbye outside Amber's apartment building. Linda, meanwhile, was the picture of the devoted wife. She joined me for company events, smiled and chatted with colleagues including Amber, and never showed even a hint of suspicion. Her acting was Academy Award worthy. 3 weeks into her investigation, Linda made what I now recognize as a brilliant strategic move. She suggested we should update our wills and life insurance policies. Being the trusting husband, I agreed. What I didn't realize was that she was positioning herself to maximize her benefits while minimizing mine in case of divorce. She also started being more affectionate than usual. More frequent intimate moments, surprise dinners, little love notes in my lunch. At the time, I thought she was just being romantic. Looking back, I realized she was creating evidence of being a loving, devoted wife, evidence that would contrast sharply with my betrayal when presented to a judge. The month passed quickly, with me living in a fool's paradise and Linda orchestrating what would become my financial downfall. She was like a chess grandmaster, thinking 10 moves ahead while I was still figuring out how to move my pawns. A month after the corporate party, I came home from work as usual. Linda was sitting at the kitchen table with some papers. "Sit down, Thad. We need to talk," she said in a calm voice. My heart started beating faster. I sat down across from her. "I know about Amber," she said simply. "I've known since day one." I felt the ground disappear from under my feet. I wanted to say something, but the words got stuck in my throat. "Don't deny it. I have evidence. Lots of evidence." She laid out on the table photographs, printed messages, restaurant receipts, even a recording of my and Amber's conversation near the hotel a week after the corporate party. But that wasn't all. She had bank statements showing where I spent money on gifts for Amber. She had my phone records showing hundreds of texts between us. She had witness statements from people who saw us together. "Why didn't you say anything?" I whispered. "Because I was preparing. 12 years of marriage, Thad. Our house, cars, savings, retirement fund. Did you think I would just let you take half and go to your young mistress?" The scope of her preparation was staggering. She had financial records going back years, documentation of my income, proof of assets I had forgotten about. She had consulted with forensic accountants to trace every dollar of our joint finances. I finally understood the scale of the catastrophe. Linda didn't just know about the betrayal, she had planned revenge. Tomorrow I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer says that with such evidence of marital infidelity, you'll get the minimum from the assets. The house stays with me as well as the main part of the savings. Linda, please? No, Thad. You made your choice that night at the hotel. I made mine the next morning. She pulled out another folder. Inside were more documents, communications with real estate appraisers, pension fund statements, even documentation about my company stock options that I had earned over the years. "You see, while you were playing around with your little girlfriend, I was securing my future. I've had the house appraised, I know exactly what our assets are worth, and I've calculated what I'm entitled to under Illinois law with adultery as grounds." The most horrifying thing was that I couldn't even be angry with her. She acted intelligently, coldly, efficiently. Like a real HR manager firing a problematic employee. But she wasn't done. Over the next week, more revelations came out. She had been recording some of our conversations at home, where I had made disparaging comments about our marriage. She had documented times when I claimed to be working late but was actually with Amber. She even had evidence of the lies I told her to cover up my affair. Linda's lawyer was a shark named Patricia Brennan, one of the best divorce attorneys in Chicago. She specialized in high-asset divorces and had a reputation for getting her clients the maximum possible settlement. Together they had built an airtight case against me. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Every dirty detail of my affair was laid out in court documents. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, clearly disapproved of my behavior. With adultery proven beyond any doubt, Linda was awarded 70% of our marital assets. But Linda's revenge went beyond just the money. She had strategically timed the divorce filing to coincide with my performance review at work. The stress and distraction of the divorce proceedings affected my job performance, and I ended up getting passed over for a promotion I had been counting on. She also made sure that our social circle knew exactly why we were divorcing. She didn't have to say much, she just let the facts speak for themselves. Soon, mutual friends were taking sides and most of them sided with her. I found myself increasingly isolated. 3 months later, I was signing divorce papers in her lawyer's office. I received 25% of the assets instead of the usual 50%. I had to sell my car to rent a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Amber, by the way, quit her job a month after the corporate party and moved to another state. She said she didn't want problems. Probably realized the game wasn't worth the candle. The house we had lived in for 8 years, the house where we had planned to grow old together, now belonged entirely to Linda. She had not only kept it but had also gotten me to agree to pay part of the remaining mortgage as part of the settlement. My retirement savings, which I had been building for 15 years, were split so unfavorably that I realized I'd have to work at least 10 more years than I had originally planned. The stock options I had earned through years of dedicated work at the company were divided in a way that gave Linda the lion's share. Even worse, because adultery was proven in court, I was required to pay Linda's legal fees in addition to my own. Her shark lawyer had charged premium rates, and I found myself with a bill for over $50,000 in legal costs. The most devastating blow came when I realized that Linda had been planning this from the very beginning of our marriage. She had kept meticulous records of everything, every contribution I made to our joint accounts, every major purchase, every investment decision. She had been preparing for this possibility for years just in case. During the final court hearing, Linda looked radiant. She wore a navy blue suit that I had bought her for Christmas 2 years earlier, a detail that felt like a final insult. She answered the judge's questions calmly and professionally, never once showing emotion or vindictiveness. When it was my turn to speak, I could barely get the words out. The weight of my mistakes, the brilliance of her strategy, the completeness of my defeat, it all crashed down on me at once. I mumbled my agreement to the terms and signed the papers with shaking hands. As we left the courthouse, Linda turned to me one last time. "I hope she was worth it, Thad," she said quietly. "Because this is what betrayal costs." And Linda? She still lives in our house, got a promotion at work, and judging by her social media profile, is having a wonderful time traveling through Europe with her friends. She's even started dating someone new, a successful doctor she met through work. Sometimes I think about that evening at the hotel. 40 minutes of pleasure cost me 12 years of married life and most of my assets. But what strikes me most is not that. What strikes me most is how perfectly Linda planned everything. For a whole month, she made breakfasts, smiled, asked about my day, knowing that every day she was collecting evidence for my financial destruction. I've had time to reflect on what happened, and I've come to understand that Linda's revenge was not just about the money or the house. It was about respect. I had disrespected our marriage, our vows, and her as a person. Her methodical, calculated response was her way of showing me and everyone else that she was not someone to be trifled with. The irony is that I had always admired Linda's intelligence and strategic thinking in her professional life. She was known at work for her ability to handle difficult personnel situations with skill and precision. I just never imagined that those same skills would one day be turned against me. Now 2 years later, I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I live in a studio apartment, drive a used car, and have started seeing a therapist to deal with the guilt and regret. I've learned hard lessons about loyalty, respect, and the consequences of betrayal. When I tell this story to friends, they say Linda acted vindicatively. But honestly, I deserved it. She just turned out to be smarter than me. Much smarter. Looking back, I realized that Linda had given me 12 years of her life, her love, and her trust. In return, I gave her betrayal and humiliation. Her response, while devastating to me, was proportional to the damage I had caused. But Linda's revenge didn't end with the divorce papers. 6 months after the settlement, I received a call from my boss, Mr. Richardson. He wanted to see me in his office immediately. My stomach dropped as I walked down the hallway, wondering what could be wrong. "Thad, we need to discuss your employment here," he said, gesturing for me to sit down. "It's come to our attention that you may have violated company policy regarding workplace relationships and conduct." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" He pulled out a folder, one that looked disturbingly familiar. "We received an anonymous complaint about inappropriate behavior during company events, specifically the corporate party 6 months ago. The complaint included detailed documentation. Linda had sent my company HR department copies of all the evidence she had gathered. Photos of me and Amber at the hotel, records of our lunch meetings during work hours, even documentation of how I had used company time to conduct my personal affair. This is a clear violation of our ethics code, Thad. You're being placed on probation for 6 months. Any further violations will result in immediate termination." I left that meeting feeling completely defeated. Linda had managed to damage not just my finances and personal life, but my professional reputation as well. She had played a longer game than I ever imagined possible. 2 weeks later, I received another surprise. A legal notice from Linda's attorney. Apparently, she was claiming that some of the assets I had retained in the divorce settlement were actually acquired through funds that should have been considered joint property. She was demanding an additional $25,000. Her forensic accountant had discovered that I had used money from our joint savings account 2 years earlier to buy stock options through my company's employee program. Since those stocks had appreciated significantly, she argued that she was entitled to a portion of the gains. The worst part was that she was probably right. My own lawyer advised me to settle rather than fight it in court, where I would likely lose and end up paying even more in legal fees. How did I not see this coming? I asked my attorney, David Martinez. "Your ex-wife is exceptionally thorough," he replied grimly. "In 20 years of practice, I've rarely seen someone so methodically prepared for divorce proceedings. She had contingency plans for contingency plans. As I wrote another check to Linda, I realized that her revenge was like a chess game where she was always thinking 5 moves ahead. Every time I thought the worst was over, she revealed another devastating strategy. 3 months later, I ran into Sarah, Linda's friend who had witnessed my initial betrayal at the hotel, at a coffee shop downtown. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, but I approached her anyway. "Sarah, can I ask you something? Did Linda really plan all of this from the beginning?" She hesitated, then sighed. "Thad, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but, yes. The night of the corporate party, after I told her what I saw, she didn't cry or get angry like you'd expect. She just got very quiet and said, 'Thank you for telling me. I need to think about what to do next.' And then? The next day, she called me and asked if I would be willing to testify about what I witnessed if needed. She was already thinking about legal proceedings before you even woke up with your hangover." Sarah looked genuinely sorry for me. She spent that entire first week researching divorce law, consulting with attorneys, and figuring out how to document everything. She even asked me to keep notes about any conversations we had regarding your behavior, in case she needed witnesses. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. While I was stumbling around feeling guilty but hoping everything would blow over, Linda was already building her case with the precision of a prosecutor. "Why didn't she just confront me immediately?" I asked. "Because she knew you'd probably confess, apologize, and maybe end the affair. But that wouldn't have given her the leverage she needed for a favorable divorce settlement. She needed irrefutable proof of ongoing adultery, not just a one-night mistake you regretted." Sarah's words made me understand the true depth of Linda's strategic thinking. She hadn't just wanted to punish me for the betrayal, she had wanted to ensure her own financial security for the future. "She also said something else," Sarah continued reluctantly. "She said that if you were capable of cheating once, you'd probably do it again eventually. So rather than give you a chance to be more careful next time, she decided to end things on her terms while she had the upper hand." That conversation with Sarah haunted me for weeks. It made me realize that Linda's month of normal behavior hadn't been about giving me a chance or hoping I'd confess. It had been about gathering ammunition for the biggest fight of our lives, a fight I didn't even know was happening. A year after the divorce was finalized, I received one final surprise from Linda. A brief email that simply said, "I wanted you to know that I'm getting remarried next month to Dr. James Peterson. We met through work and he's everything I hope to find in a partner. I'm very happy. I hope you've learned from your mistakes and can build a better life for yourself. Linda." The message was polite, even kind in its way. But the subtext was clear. While I was struggling in my studio apartment, dealing with financial stress and professional probation, she had moved on to a better life with someone who respected and valued her. Dr. Peterson, I later learned through mutual acquaintances, was a successful cardiologist who made 3 times my salary. He was divorced himself with 2 teenage children, and according to everyone who knew him, he treated Linda like a queen. They bought a beautiful house in Lincoln Park, took vacations to Europe and the Caribbean, and seemed genuinely happy together. Linda's social media showed a life of dinner parties, cultural events, and romantic getaways, everything she had wanted but never quite achieved during our marriage. The contrast with my own situation was stark. I was still living paycheck to paycheck, still dealing with the professional fallout from the HR investigation, and still struggling to rebuild my social life after losing most of our mutual friends in the divorce. But perhaps the most painful realization came when I understood that Linda's new relationship proved something important. The problem hadn't been that she was incapable of happiness or impossible to please. The problem had been me and my failure to appreciate what I had. Dr. Peterson gave her the attention, respect, and devotion that I had taken for granted. He didn't flirt with younger women at parties or take secret phone calls in the garage. He didn't lie about working late or make her feel like she had to compete for his attention. 2 years after everything fell apart, I finally began to understand the full scope of what I had lost. It wasn't just the money or the house or the comfortable lifestyle. I had lost a partner who had been intelligent, loyal, and deeply committed to our marriage. I had lost someone who would have stood by me through anything, until I gave her a reason not to. The last time I saw Linda was at a mutual friend's wedding 18 months ago. She looked radiant in an elegant burgundy dress, her arm linked with Dr. Peterson's. They seemed to glow with happiness and contentment. When our eyes met across the room, she simply nodded politely and turned away. No anger, no bitterness, just the calm satisfaction of someone who had played the game better than her opponent and moved on to bigger and better things. That nod said everything. It said, "I won. You lost. I'm thriving and we both know you deserved exactly what you got." As I watched her dance with her new husband, laughing at something he whispered in her ear, I finally understood the true cost of my betrayal. I hadn't just lost a wife, I had lost my best chance at happiness, and I had given it away for 40 minutes with a woman who didn't even stick around when things got complicated. Linda had taught me the hardest lesson of my life. Some mistakes can't be fixed, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some people are smart enough to cut their losses and move on to something better. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.